Grace to you and peace from him which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. We talked about him a little in Sunday school this morning. He is. That is the one with whom we have to do. And maybe he describes himself as the I am. And no one else can do that. There is no other person on earth who can say, I am. Because we're not. We're not it. We didn't get here by ourselves. We can't do everything by ourselves. But God is that. Nobody made him. Nobody sustains him. He just is. And so when we think about him as the one with whom we have to do, it can either be a comfort or it can be a fear. If we are abiding in him in faith, like we talked about in Sunday school, it can be a comfort. If we're not, it is fearful to fall into his hands. And so I'm grateful to know him this morning. Not like I wish I did. Not like I hope to someday. But at least I see through a glass darkly. I know in part. And it's enough. It's enough for now. This morning, I am revisiting something that I talked about last week. Because I didn't get it very well this week. And so I'm giving it to myself, and you all can listen in. The title is Run with Patience. Taken from Hebrews chapter 12. I'll read the first 4 verses there. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. So a race is a fitting comparison to the Christian life. But it is a marathon, not a 100-yard dash. 26.2 miles is a marathon. I think that's the right fraction there. If I would have come up here this morning wearing a big hiking backpack and hiking boots and told you that I am prepared to run a marathon this afternoon, I'm dressed and ready to go run a marathon, what would you have thought? Would you have thought that I know what I'm doing? Or would you have thought that I must be somewhat out of my mind? That's not how people run marathons, right? The more I experience of life, the more I realize that time is against us when we think of running successfully. Time means that we don't get everything done that we should, or that would be helpful, because we only have so much time, right? But it also means, on the other hand, that sometimes it feels like we have been running a long, long time, and how can we go on any further? So on the one hand, we feel like we're running out of time. On the other hand, we have too much time to run. I don't know if you can identify with those feelings or not. But that's what I mean when I say that time is against us in this race of life. Just like in a physical race, you have to be the fastest to win it, right? Nobody wins the race by being the slowest. I don't know. There's some funny races out there, but I don't know of any race that you win by taking the longest to get it done. I take that back. There is one. I think they had it in Mountain View this week. It's called the slow ride on the motorcycle. See how slowly you can ride your motorcycle down the course to get to the end. But we say that's not a race, right? It's not. We all know that a race is about getting there the fastest. So let's not think that we have all the time in the world and we can wait until later to run better. That's what I realized this week. That I can't wait until later to run better. I have to start now. And I'm not a runner in any way, shape, or form. But I did a little reading about how to train to run a marathon. Not a lot, but a little bit. And just reading about it made me tired. The interesting thing that I read is that they don't recommend trying to train to go from the couch to a marathon. They recommend that you train strength training, running training for at least a year, and then enter the 12 to 20 week marathon training program. 3 to 5 months of training to run a marathon. After you've trained for a year. It makes more sense to me how they can do it if they train for that long. But there's a lesson for us in that we need to be trained in righteousness before we can expect to do well in the race of life. There's training that needs to be happening in our lives if we expect to do well at running the race that is set before us. And most of us have had parents who helped us, who trained us when we were young. And that is a huge advantage in this race of life. Because what it does is it diminishes our baggage that we have when we take off in the race. It doesn't take it away, okay? But it diminishes it. Which is a huge advantage for us. So this verse here doesn't say, let us choose a race to run if we want to. It's not what he says. He says, let us run with patience the race that is set before us. We've got a course to run, brothers and sisters. We don't get to pick it. None of us get to say, I want to run that course or that one. We are given a course to run. The only thing we can do is decide whether we're going to run or not. We can say, no, I'm out of this. I'm not in this race. I quit. Not going to do it. That's the only choice that we have. we're given a race to run, and we can decide if we're going to run it or not and how we're going to run it. But we can't decide which one to run. And that sometimes causes problems for us because we look at other people's races and we say, God, that's not fair. Their race is easier to run than mine. And you expect me to keep running when I've got the hard one to run? We never look at someone else and say, well, I shouldn't say we never, but not as often do we look at other people and say, wow, my race is a lot easier than theirs. Sometimes we do. But most times it's the other way around. We look at other people and we say, wish I had their race. It's all downhill. Now sometimes we say running downhill is harder than running uphill, but it's harder on your joints and some of those things, but it's not quite as physically tiring. You can just kind of roll down the hill. One of the things that I came across as I was reading was this quote. One of the best ways to ensure consistency with your training and to keep the pursuit fun is to share the journey with others. Now, that's talking about training to run a physical marathon. But that's what it says here in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. He says that we are to look at those who have run the race of life already. He says, this is just after the faith chapter. And he says, seeing that there's all these people that have already run a race faithfully, let's us get in the race. So we have the witnesses, the people that have done it. If someone has already run a race and they tell you that it is possible to do it, does it make it seem more doable than if you've never met anybody who ran the race and made it successfully? Right? Makes it seem a little more possible because that's their normal, kind of, at least. I don't know if anybody that runs 26 miles is normal or not, but anyhow, they're at least mostly normal. I know a man that did the I don't remember what they call it, the triathlon or the Ironman or something like that. You know, a pretty normal person, just had a little more discipline than what I do. But that's what he's saying here. Find people that have run the race before you. Surround yourself with people that can help you run well. We need that. We're not made to be lone runners. Like, there is actually a thing of running in a pack that makes it easier for them to run. The person in the front, you know how geese fly? The one in the front breaks the wind and the others just have just a little bit easier time because they can catch just a little bit of lift off the front guy or the one in front of them. That's why they move around. Runners do the same thing. They run in kind of in a pack. And it's hard to move to the front because when you pull out of the pack and try to pass, now you don't think there's that much wind resistance just running, right? We think about it when we're driving a vehicle or something like that, but it's the same principle in running. So, share the journey with others. In your race of life, don't try to go it alone. It's not a good way to do it. It says we're supposed to run the race, and that means to just run or walk hastily. If you can't run, at least walk fast. And we're to do it with patience or cheerful endurance or constancy. And we're supposed to get rid of our junk, our weights, and our sins. Now, each of us, we talk about, sometimes we say, they have a lot of baggage. You ever heard that phrase talking about some of the stuff that someone has experienced in life that makes it hard for them? Well, that's what he's talking about here. That's the weight, the baggage that we each have. We all have it. It's just different forms of the same stuff. So lest you think you are the only one that ever had to deal with this kind of baggage, you're not. We're not. It might be slightly different than someone else has dealt with, but you're not the only one that has had to deal with something very similar. The question is, what are we doing with it? Are we paying attention to getting rid of it so we can run better? Or do we just keep dragging it along with us? There's a difference here made between weights and sins. We're supposed to get rid of both of them so that we can run better. But there are things that are not sin that just make it plain hard to run. Jesus called them in the parable of the sower, or the parable of the soil, he talked about the cares of this life and the deceitfulness of riches that want to come in and choke the word. Those are the weights, the things of this life that just kind of want to drag us down. Take our focus off of what we're supposed to be doing, what we're here for. The other thing is that as we are running this race together, you can see what I'm packing along on my back better than I can. Because I can't see behind me. I know that there's stuff I'm dragging with me that I need to get rid of. But the people around me can see it better than I can. And I need their help to get rid of it. Am I willing to listen when someone points out some of my baggage, my weight? If you get rid of that, the word weight actually means a mass, like just a hunk of something. If you get rid of that, you could run better. But I kind of like it. That's my pet whatever it is. I kind of like having it around. That's who I am. It's part of me. That's the problem often. It's things that are just part of us. And it feels like, if I get rid of that, who am I going to be? But we're called to lay those down if it's hindering us from running the race. To not find our identity in our stuff or whatever we think we are, but to find our identity in Christ. We're to look to Jesus and run for Him. And not worry about what that makes me look like. There's a thing that I've heard about. I have no experience with it whatsoever. That's called runner's high. You ever heard of that? It's something that people who run a lot get. When you're in good enough physical shape that you can actually run without feeling like you're going to die, it releases endorphins in your brain. You know what endorphins are? They're feel-good hormones. And it's kind of like taking drugs, only it's 100% natural. It's not the same thing, like you're not going to go loopy or anything like that. But it makes you feel good. Now, the only thing I've ever gotten from running was tired. But think it would be neat to be able to run and feel good, like to have it make me feel good when I'm running. But it takes a lot of work to get there, right? You don't get there by saying, I want runner's high, so I'm going to go out and jump off the couch, leave my potato chips and my soda pop, and I'm going to go run 3 miles to get a runner's high. It's not going to work. And it's the same way in our Christian life. We have to work at it. We have to practice running. But as we run, however falteringly it is, we find joy in running for Jesus. I know a little bit about it, right? Just a little bit. But it says here that Jesus did what he did for the joy that was set before him. And we have that hope. We have that promise that there is coming a day of perfect joy and rest in heaven with God. But we can taste a little bit of it now. The runner's high that we can get now gives us the strength, helps give us strength to carry on in our race. Sometimes we give up in the Christian life because it's just too hard. Keep on. Keep on running. There is joy coming. The runner's high is there for those who run long enough. You have to keep running long enough to get it, though. You don't get it with just a little sprint. First Corinthians 9, verses 24 to 27 say, Know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize? So run, that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I, not as one that beateth the air, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. So Paul is saying here that in the physical race, there is only one winner. Like, really. Second place doesn't count. Right? If you didn't win it, if you're not first place, you didn't really win. You beat some of the others, right? But we all know that first is the only winner. She says everybody runs, but only one gets the prize in a physical race. Now, there are people who want to say today, one of the big slogans in our world is, everyone's a winner. Well, actually, in the Christian life, that is true. Everyone who runs their race to the end wins. Now, I don't know. It does seem like there are greater rewards for those who run better. If you look at some of Jesus' parables, it does seem like maybe there's different levels of reward. I don't know how that is, and that's not the point here. The point is that the greatest prize will be to hear the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And you don't hear those at the midpoint. You might, okay? I'm not saying God doesn't give us those confirmations. But it's not until the end of the race. Whether that comes at our death, whether that comes with Jesus' return, that's the end of our race. And if we have run well to the end, we will hear those words. well done. And that is enough prize to make the race worth it. So run that ye may obtain, Paul says here. Not uncertainly. Don't this way, that way. If you saw somebody running a race and they were all over the track, like it looked like they didn't know where the finish line was, would you think they were trying to win? Now, maybe if they can run so fast that nobody else is close to them, and then they just start goofing off up there and running, zigzagging around. But I think there's something about having to stay in your lane too when you're running a race. I'm not sure. But we know what a real focused runner looks like. He's running straight, right? Not uncertainly, not a little bit this way and then a little bit this way. And that's what Paul says. That's how I'm running. I know where I'm headed. So in our race, that's how we need to know where to go. I've seen markings on the road. They run a marathon, run some different length races occasionally, once a year I think in Mountain View. And they'll put signs up. They have signs on signposts. They have arrows pointing, different colored arrows, and they have paint on the roads with turn where you're supposed to turn for the different length races, right? So you know, okay, I'm in the blue race, so I follow the blue arrows. If they say go straight here, I go straight. If they say turn, I turn. Because it's not just once around a track. Our race goes up and down and over, and there's turns, and we need to know where we're going in our race. We need to know the guidebook, which is what it says in 2 Timothy 2 verse 5. It says that if a man also strive for masteries, yet is he not crowned, except he strive lawfully. You have to play by the rules, right? How many times have you heard of someone who won and then was disqualified because they found out he was cheating? How many times have you heard of a Christian who seemed to be winning and then was disqualified because he wasn't playing by the rules? When I say playing by the rules, you know what I mean, okay? It's not a game. That's not how we make ourselves right, is by the rules, okay? But there are ways that we must live if we expect to win the race of life. God's laid it out for us here. We must strive lawfully. Psalm 119:32 says, I will run the way of thy commandments when thou shalt enlarge my heart. God, it is God's work in us. When he enlarges our heart, that enables us to keep his commandments, to run the way he wants us to run. It's not all about us doing it. It's about God's work in us, giving us the power to run. So what do we do when we figure out that we're not running anymore, or we're not running well? I've heard that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. That might seem trite. That might seem cliche. But I have to choose to do differently or I'll get nowhere. Remember? I said we're given a race. And the only choice we have is whether we're going to run it or not. So it's up to me whether I want to run for God or not. He does his part, but I have to choose to do mine. I heard that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. But I live that way too often. we have to make the choice to do it differently. I understand the feeling of it being too much to change. Like, to me, the thought of trying to get ready to run a marathon is overwhelming. To go from being a couch potato to running a marathon, just like, it's too big. My brain just goes into overload and I'm just, forget it. I can't do it. Sometimes it's that way in our Christian life. We're like, I had too much to work on. Where in the world do I start? How do I become what God wants me to be? I don't even know how. I don't know, maybe you all never feel that way. But when I hear of a better way to live, I have two choices. One, I can either keep doing what I've been doing and hope for different results, or two, I can start doing differently. You know, I can look at my life and see what I think is important because of how I live. The question is, do I like what I have chosen? Or am I going to be willing to change, get rid of the baggage, and turn loose of it so I can run better for God? Am I willing to run my race? There's a thing called hitting the wall when you're running. Been running great, and all of a sudden you can't go another step. I don't know what it's like, but I have a friend who ran a half marathon, and he told me he did that. He said he'd heard about it, and it happened. He said, I hit the wall. He said, I could not go any further. My brain would not. Emotionally, he was drained. Physically, he was drained. He just couldn't go. He said he kept walking, but he had hit the wall. And I think that happens to us in our spiritual lives at times. We get to a point and it feels like, I don't know if I can go one more day. But the wonderful thing is that we are not running in our own strength. 2 Chronicles 16:9 says that the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong in the behalf of those whose heart is perfect toward him. God is looking to see who he can help. He's like the ultimate coach in the race of life. Most successful runners have a coach who spurs them on and keeps them accountable. God wants to be that for us as well. But he's not just a coach saying, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. He's the coach that can put his energy into us. I don't know how that works, okay? But God shows himself strong on behalf of those who turn toward him. He wants to take you on in the race of life. He doesn't want you to quit. He doesn't want you to fail. He wants to get you to the end. I'm going to read you something about how to live a righteous life. When we hit the wall, how do we go on? To do right is to be righteous. How can we do that? Number one, do what is right for the next 15 seconds. Then, do what is right for the next 15 seconds. Then, number three, do not do anything that would displease God for the next 15 seconds. Number four, do not do anything that would displease God for the next 15 seconds. You have lived a righteous life for 1 minute. Do that all day, every day, for the rest of your life. It really is that simple. That's written by Frank Reed. And that may seem simplistic, but I have been driving and been so tired that I didn't know if I could keep my eyes open any longer. And I would drive from one milepost to the next milepost. And did you know that on the interstate, those mileposts are 2/10 of a mile apart, and it takes a long time to get from one to the next when you're that tired? That's how it feels sometimes in life, right? I'm just dragging along. I don't know. But we have to keep going. That's the choice that we have to make in our Christian life. I will live for you today, God. I will live for you right now. This second is all I can do, but I will right now. When you hit the wall, that's how you keep living for God, is by making the choice, not for the rest of your life, but for just this moment. And God infuses that with His strength. Okay, somehow, when I choose for God in this moment, He is there. If I asked you today, if you wanted $1 million today, or 1 penny today, that doubles in amount every day for 30 days, which would you choose? 1 penny. Seems like a really foolish choice, but do you know that at the end of 30 days, your payment on day 30 is $5,368,688.64, plus the $2 million some dollars on the day before that, and the $1 million on the day before that. Seems incredible, right? How can 1 penny go to $5 million in 30 days? Now, in real life, we can't do that. There are no investments that do that. And in our spiritual life, it doesn't grow that fast. But the point is, it only takes a little bit to make a difference. It doesn't have to start out big. We tend to think that the small things don't matter, but they do. That's what gets us in the race of life, is the little things. And runners know that, right? They know that they can't afford to eat wrong the week before a big race. Because even if they eat right the day before, what they ate 5 or 6 days before will still be affecting them. They understand that. But so often in the Christian life, I tend to think that the little things aren't that big a deal, right? I've got the big things in order, it'll be okay. No, brothers and sisters, the little things matter. When you're running for life, you can't afford the little things to be wrong. Another thing I read about running a marathon is that you need to get nourishment along the way, somehow. Either you need to carry it with you, or a lot of them have stations where you can stop and you can grab a snack as you run past and eat it on the run if you want. You can get extra water. You can get the other kinds of drinks you need. But you have to get something to replenish what is going out of your body. It's the same way in our Christian life. The grace I got yesterday won't carry me today. And what I get today won't do for tomorrow. Now, does it help? Absolutely, okay? What I got yesterday gives me strength for today. What I get today gives me strength for tomorrow. But I need more. Like, I can't just live on what I got yesterday. I think of the manna in the wilderness for the children of Israel. God said, get what you need for today. And they went out and they gathered it up and they ate it for today. And then tomorrow they went and got some more. And the next day they got some more. That's how we are called to live as Christians. Not getting what we need for tomorrow, only today. The analogy breaks down a little bit, okay? Because what we get today does give us strength in our Christian life, okay? But if we're dependent on an experience in the past, we're setting ourselves up for failure. It has to be current, fresh relationship with Jesus Christ to give us the strength to run well. And here's the promise from the familiar verse in Isaiah 40, verse 31, that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles, and they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Psalm 103:5 says, Who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles. This is the promise of sustenance that comes from God. God says, if you wait on me, and that is an expectant looking for what God has for me. He says, if you wait on me, if you look to me, I will give you the strength that you need to carry on. When I place my hope in His strength and not in my own, through His power, we can finish the race of life that He has given us to run well. We can finish well through His power. May we be good runners so that at the end of our race, the end of our life, we can say with Paul that I have finished my course. I ran it to the end. And I've kept the faith. Let's kneel for prayer.